A Native American tribe stole this guy's airplane. We're going to talk about it on this Taking Off podcast. Hi, I'm Dan Milliken with the Taking Off podcast, and before we bring on our guest, a Native American tribe head stole his airplane, and we'll hear about his story. I want to bring up a concept that's used in law, and it's called ipse dixit, and it means because I said so in Latin. It basically means when you don't have a really good reason, it's why the American colonists fought King George. But not only on a very big scale, it happens on a very small scale. And we're going to talk about that with the small scale being a local Native American tribe because they said so. With that, I'm going to introduce William LeBaron. William, thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, okay, so William, you came to attention because you did a couple of videos titled "The Tribe Stole My Airplane." And before we get to the story of how the tribe stole your airplane, there wasn't a lot in the video about your flying and your background as a pilot. So talk about that. I know you in the video is clearly it was a Mooney and an M-20. So talk about your pilot experience and your airplane.
Yeah. So I started my pilot training about 10 years ago to the day. The reason for it, I had basically a equipment rental business out of Texas and North Dakota that I was working with my dad. And so I started that so that I, was more able to travel. First generation pilot, my dad is actually just about ready to take his check right now as well, 9 years later. But to me, it was just about making the world a smaller place. And so, since then, I passed my instrument rating, and my airplane, which I bought over 9 years ago now, is a 65 Mooney M-20E.
Oh, M-20. I said M-25. Okay, M-20. I don't know my Moonies, so I apologize to all the Mooney owners out there.
You've offended everyone.
I know. It's what I do.
Very mad. But it's a great little aircraft, fuel injected, 200 horsepower. Honestly, I'm a very practical guy, so I chose that plane because of its speed efficiency rating to fuel consumption. And I fit perfectly fine in it. My passengers in the back probably don't feel the same way I do, but I really bought the plane for me, not for them. And most of my flying is solo. So love the platform. It's just been a really great cross-country aircraft for me.
I've heard that the Mooney, I haven't actually ever flown in one. I've heard the Mooney is just very narrow, that you're going to be very comfortable with whoever you're flying with.
It's not that much more narrow than your 172.
Okay.
You're talking, I believe it's within about 2 inches of width. The trick with the Mooney is actually getting into it because you climb up onto the wing and you have to step inside. Stepping inside isn't hard, but when you get out of it, it's hard to do it gracefully.
Is that the same thing as the Pipers?
I don't know. I haven't flown.
Okay. Oh, now you've offended the Piper owners.
Probably. I hope so. Many pilots hate Piper pilots.
Right. Well, and so you said that you primarily fly alone. So what's the reason for that? What's your mission in the plane?
My mission is work. So, you can see my company logo on the back. I work for a software company in Salt Lake at this point. So I'm, visiting clients, going to conferences, things like that. So I'm not often flying with my family, and I work remote from our corporate office. So I'm usually flying instead of flying commercially.
Right.
And that's really the reason I'm usually alone. So it's, I would say 90% of my flying is just me in the plane.
Well, hey, I feel you on that. I would say that almost 90% or more of my flying is business related. So it's why I got my Cessna 210. Now you've got a Mooney, a small plane, but looking at your channel, I know that you've got at least 3 boys. I know that there's a daughter in there too. So you've got a fairly large family, don't you?
Yeah, and I recognize that very early. I recognized I was not going to be able to afford a plane that we could all travel.
No.
So I just embraced that fact. In fact, I've already done the math, and if I'm ever trying to fit my whole family, it's going to be my wife getting a pilot's license and a second Mooney, because that's more affordable than trying to get a 6-passenger 210, in my view.
Okay, fair enough. And you can just fly in formation to where you need to go, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah, split the family up. Okay. Well, we've been teasing this whole thing. Well, a Native American tribe tried to steal your airplane. Let's just launch into it. Tell us the story about what happened.
Okay, so it was May, I guess, beginning of May. I was visiting Havasupai. I don't know if you guys have heard about it. There's a little airport called Grand Canyon Caverns, and it's a dirt strip. I was bold enough to land my Mooney there to pick up our permits, but they didn't have parking. There were elk tracks all over the taxiway and runway, and there were weeds where my wing was just that close to brushing up against weeds as I was taxiing to their parking area that was full of piles of gravel. So I was looking for an alternative place to land to do this Havasupai trip. And I mean, it's 5 miles apart is this Wallapai airport. The way it works is I live on the other side of the Grand Canyon. You can drive 6 hours around, or you can fly 35 minutes across. And so for this trip, I had a friend driving in from Las Vegas, my brother-in-law, and he was just going to pick us up at wherever we landed. But just time constraints, trying to get to Trailhead early. I was focused on this little area. So I called the number for the Wallapai airport. It rang to a guy who said, "Hey, you got the wrong number. I get these calls all the time. Please don't bother me."
Right.
So I did some quick Googling. I found the Wallapai headquarter phone number. Same number, just different area code. They had a typo in the area code, or someone actually told me in the comments that the area code has changed 3 times in the past 20 years.
Oh, wow.
So it's not a typo. They just don't update any of their systems. But reached the Wallapai tribal office, explained I'm trying to get permission to land at this airport. They said, you need to talk to our Grand Canyon Resort Corporation. I called there, left a voicemail, called back. They sent me to another person. And eventually they said, yeah, you can land there. You need to bring your own ties and chalks. Just gave me instructions on what to expect. And it's just an isolated little strip. So, but it's paved better than the one. And I flew over it after I picked up my permits. I flew over it to inspect the airport.
And it looked good.
Eyes on it.
No big X's on it or anything.
No big X's. And it was just, I was trying to do due diligence and make this work. And I should be more educated, but I'm not, or I wasn't, about tribes and the nature of that. So with permission, landed at that airport the next day, right at sunrise. We had our friends pick us up. We drove about an hour to the
Trailhead.
Trailhead, and started our hike down to the bottom of the canyon, which is about 10 miles, a couple thousand feet of elevation down. You're backpacking all of your gear in. And when you get to the bottom of the canyon, there's a Native American village there. And once I walked into that village, I suddenly had cell phone signal again. And I had a voicemail from the Wallapai tribal police letting me know that I was trespassing and they wanted the plane moved. So I was actually able to call back and reach this officer. His name was Officer Woods. I explained, hey, I'd spoken with Chris at Grand Canyon Resort Corporation and in this chain of events. We got permission. He instructed me with this. So he's like, let me check on what you're saying here. So he got off the phone with me. He called the tribal council. He called me back and he's like, hey, they're saying they didn't give you permission. They're confused, and they do want the plane moved. And so I'm like, I'm not sure how we got here, but let me try and reach back the person that I spoke with initially that gave me permission and try and figure this out. So down that chain, spoke with Chris again. He's like, oh, I thought you were talking about Grand Canyon West. Now, I'd used Wallapai Airport over and over, and what I found out was all of the tribe calls it the Limestone Airport.
Oh.
They don't actually, internally, they don't know it as the Wallapai Airport. Now, all of the aviation maps do have it listed correctly.
Right.
that was one point of confusion. He assumed I was talking about Grand Canyon West, which is called Grand Canyon West, which is also on tribal land for whatever reason. I don't know why. He's the airport manager there. But that was the assumption. But he's like, hey, you actually need to talk to this person, which was the initial phone number from the...
So here we go again. While you're hiking.
Yeah, and I'm at the bottom of the canyon, 10 miles in. Well, about 8 miles in. I was almost to the campsite. And it's now fought because it's summertime in the bottom of the Grand Canyon. So I'm like, I really don't want to hike out of this right after hiking into it. A 16-mile loop like that in the heat of the day would be brutal to try and solve this. So I'm trying to get this taken care of right now, right now over the phone. But I get back, I call the number, I get to Officer Scott Crozier. I'm sorry, not Officer Scott Crozier.
Right.
Vice Chair of the Tribal Council, Scott Crozier. And I explained the confusion. Hey, I spoke with Chris. I thought this is what's happening. How do I make this right? I'm very sorry. And he was very understanding. He's like, when are you going to be hiking out? I was planning to be leaving on Sunday. So he was like, okay, we can let you leave the plane there. We will keep an eye on it until you pick it up. You'll be met by game and fish officers on Sunday. We'll charge you a $16.27 per person per day. They call it a trespassing fee, but it's an access fee. I don't know why they call it a trespassing fee. But $16.27 per person per day for access. And we will have the game and fish officers will meet you there to fill out your paperwork. And you'll be good to go. And I was like, thank you so much. I'm really grateful. I'm happy to pay. Arranged it with him. Called Officer Woods back. Officer Woods confirmed the details with me. He was like, who were you? And you were speaking with Scott Crozier. And I was like, he said his name was Scott, and he said he was the vice chair. And so the officer said, you need to call that guy back and confirm you were speaking with Scott Crozier, because we need to know. So I called back. I confirmed again that I had been speaking with Scott Crozier. I spoke with Officer Woods again. He went in person and confirmed with Scott Crozier that everything was good to go. And so this is a police officer for the tribe. This is the vice chair of the tribe. I assumed I had everything resolved, the second time around after getting permission from the wrong person.
Right. So now you can feel a little bit more at ease.
Yes. Not at ease, because I was still stressed the whole weekend.
Right.
Do our weekend thing and have a soup with me and my wife and some friends. We hike out on Sunday. I was planning to meet them there at noon on Sunday, but I was a little bit earlier than expected because I had a friend that was willing to wait for our... We paid for some mules. You can load stuff on the mules, and they don't get out of the canyon until later in the day. And so not all of us had to wait until the mules got there, as long as one person was willing to do it. So we actually got out earlier than anticipated. So I got to the airport, and my plane was blocked in. There were trucks. I mean, they were legitimately parked that close on both sides of that plane with their two trucks. And I had no cell phone signal out here. You're just in the middle of nowhere. So I had to drive back up the road to find cell phone signal to call the Wallapai police, because the game and fish officers never actually reached.
Okay, so two trucks blocking your plane, but there were no people there?
No people there.
Okay.
But apparently they don't want me to run off with the plane.
No, clearly.
In their absence. And so I'm calling the Wallapai police, who are the only people that I had spoken with so far, besides Scott Crozier. And the officer that I'd spoken with is at church. She's not available. But they say they'll try and reach the game and fish officers, because these were game and fish trucks, to try and help me get in touch with them. But while I'm up on this hillside a few miles away, I see a truck pull onto the airport. So I leave my cell phone signal spot, go back to the airport, approach the officers there. There are two of them, and they inform me they're citing me $2,400 fines. They're seizing the airplane, and they are planning to transport the airplane to a nearby airport on a trailer. And I'm like, I'll move my airplane. You can have your gun pointed at me the whole flight. Like, what do you need? You need to not move this airplane, because.
Right. You can. They're made out of aluminum. It's not much different than an aluminum can. You can easily dent and bust and. Yeah.
Absolutely destroy. And I mean, anyone who's looked at what it takes to remove the wings from an airplane,
oh my,
Mooney, and transport it, it's very extensive. And I learned some stuff after the fact from one of the officers who was actually very amicable and very helpful. Well, I actually learned quite a bit. They tried to hire an outside pilot. I'm going to try and be vague here. They tried to hire an outside pilot to come in and transport the airplane. And the pilot refused.
Oh, good for the pilot.
Yes. Definitely the right thing. And
But they didn't have the key. How are they going to turn the magnetos on?
They didn't have the key.
Oh, because at that point, I was thinking it was before you showed up on Sunday. But
No. At this point, I left the key in the plane.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. I one time accidentally had a key mix up in a wrong piece of luggage, and I was in Mexico without my keys to my plane. So I've since decided I'd rather someone steal my plane
than get locked. Okay, all right. So they had the key.
It seems more probable that I'm going to lose my key again than that I'm going to have someone try and steal my plane. So they had the key.
Interesting.
But still, we went back and forth. I explained the permission I got, and then the guy was just like, I don't care.
And he's with the same police department that the Officer Woods was with? The tribe?
There are two different law enforcement departments inside of this really small tribe. Like, you're talking, the tribe has a couple thousand members. You're not talking about a huge city or a large organization, but they have two different law enforcement departments. They're game and fish law enforcement and they're police law enforcement.
And that's all part of the tribe, not anything to do with the United States government.
Correct.
Okay, and also they're making tons of money per day with the camping permits to hike down into where you were going.
Yeah, these guys, I mean, anybody that rafts down the Colorado River, anybody that hikes down the Colorado River, anybody that goes on these helicopter tours, or any of they're all going through tribal land, and they have a substantial revenue source from their monopoly on this Grand Canyon land, which, it is what it is. But
yeah,
that is their source of income, is tourism. The crazy thing was I actually got the police department to send an officer out. It wasn't the officer I'd worked with. He got on the phone with the chief of police, and we went through the whole, like, hey, this is what Officer Woods, this is what we did, this is how we went through it. And the two departments apparently don't cooperate because they basically just said, your jurisdiction is as good as our jurisdiction, and we don't care, and we're not.
Okay, so it was the Game and Fish organization that was at the airport and not listening and not doing anything. The actual police department was more on your side.
Yeah, and I spoke with the police department on the following Sunday after they'd seized the plane, and the guy was like, no, I went in first and I got all the confirmation. I don't know what they're doing or why they're doing it, and they're just operating completely independently, and then ignoring the fact that, I mean, the vice chair of the tribal council is the second highest authority in the tribe.
Wow.
He had all the authority to give me permission. We had it all worked out, and they were just ignoring it, and there was a political infighting element to it.
Yeah, Ipse Dixit. Yeah, because I said so. I'm going to ignore that because I said so.
100%. And the crazy thing is, you might be inside of the continental United States, but you're not on American soil.
Right. So you have no constitutional rights or anything.
Well, you're supposed to, but your constitutional rights aren't guaranteed by any American court. You're in their court. Ultimately, like, going through the court system, the judge recused themselves in the court case because they're appointed by the vice chair and the chair of the tribal council. And they said, I can't sit and judge as you're calling testimony from my boss.
Right.
I was actually very grateful that the judge did that. So we got an outside judge to go through the process, and they refused to settle. I came on the day that that they seized the plane. I was like, can I just pay my fines and take the plane? And they refused.
I still can't believe they were going to get a pilot to fly it.
I show you some emails.
Oh, my goodness. Wow. That would be theft.
Well, yes, it would be. And they were... we're going to step into like a little bit of the conspiracy element here.
Right. Okay.
I don't know how much.
Well, I'm going to ask you some questions about that in a little bit anyway. But step into it. Let's see what we get.
I don't know what their intent was, for sure. I do know that they seized the plane. They were refusing to let me pay my fines to get it back in the short term. They were trying to force me to go to court, which was at an extended period, almost a month later. They wouldn't let me have a sooner court date.
And you asked for a sooner court date.
I certainly did.
Yeah.
At the time, I asked, can I just pay these? Can I have a sooner court date? And they refused. One of the officers spoke with me, and he said their intent was to move the airplane either on a trailer or have a mechanic come in and disassemble and load it on a trailer. So if they have the mechanic disassemble, they don't have to shut down this road. If they don't, then they would have to shut down this 30-mile road stretch to move it to the airport. Either way, he, from his mouth, said it was going to cost between like $26,000 and $40,000 for that transport, and they were going to try and charge me that as part of the get your plane back. So this is the conspiracy part. I think they were quoting that, and they were going to try and find a pilot to move it, and they were going to charge me the transport fee after getting a pilot to move it.
Oh, hey, yeah. So, Mr. LeBaron, it's going to cost us $40,000 to deconstruct your plane, trailer it, and send it over. So we'll be billing you. Then, meanwhile, you go 6 hours away home, and they hire a pilot and move it and charge you $40,000. Okay, got it. And they reassemble it, quote.
And I'm piecing this together from a couple of different people that have reached out to me in response to the video that were directly involved in this. So I can't say...
You can't prove it.
That was their intent, but I can tell you two people told me two parts of that story, and that's A plus B equals that.
Is it just so for the... And the fish and game law enforcement, is that just a way for them to try to get revenue? I mean, what is the why here of why they're playing it this way?
It's certainly revenue as a part of it, because it's...
I mean, the officers that are being the jerks there at the landing strip, they're not going to pocket money. They weren't looking for you to hand them $1,000 under the table and everything's going to be good. So, I mean, why are they being that way? I guess that's my big question.
Yeah. My impression wasn't that they were seeking bribes. I had a lot of people comment on that, on my videos, being like, oh, they were just looking. I didn't get that impression at all. Interacting with them during or after or any of that. My impression is that the seizure of the airplane is... It was an over-escalation of the situation in an attempt to, I think, collect fines, and that's their collateral, because what they have is a lack of authority outside of the tribe. So if they would have cited me and let me take the airplane, like if they would have cited me in my car and then let me drive off,
right?
I don't show back up to court and I don't pay anything, as long as I'm not ever going to return to their land, they really don't have jurisdiction outside of that. So I think the escalation is in part a reflex to the fact that they are powerless, and unless they take your assets, they're really powerless to collect their fines. And they do feel that they're abused. And okay, maybe it is the case, but I think they feel that they're abused by outsiders coming in, and they feel like this is their only recourse. So this is my slightly in their defense.
Okay.
That's why they're responding that way. But then I look at it, and there's no reason for them to have escalated and done what they did as far as citing me to begin with. I had the permission. They knew about the permission. They were upset that I showed up to the airport earlier than they were expecting. They knew what time I was going to be
they thought you were going to sneak off.
Yeah, because I'd arranged the time that I was going to be there with the person that gave me permission, who relayed it to them. They just said, we're going to do what we want, and ignored the permission. But then they were upset that I showed up earlier than I told them I was going to be there. So there was some weird dynamics of just, I don't know, a half-baked shakedown it just wasn't, I don't know, it wasn't intelligently organized, nor did they intelligently present it as a case, nor did they structurally follow their own. It was in the courtroom, it looked absurd. The judge.
Yeah, okay, let's go to that now. So, but before we get to the actual courtroom, you did get your plane back before that, right?
Yes.
Okay, talk about that.
I hired, I spent Monday. They took the plane Sunday. They were going to move it. If they had seized the plane and they weren't going to move it, I may not have hired an attorney. I may have waited the 30 days, close to 30 days, and just shown up to court and paid my fees and gotten my plane back. Just attorneys are expensive. And
right. Now you're going to be investing here. Yeah.
But I knew they were going to either damage the plane or try and charge me
$40,000. Right. Yeah.
So I was interested in having them not move the airplane. So I started calling attorneys in the area. I found out really quickly that no attorneys are going to accept a case on tribal lands in a tribal court. I was told no multiple times very quickly. So then I found out from one of them that you're required to have a specially approved attorney. The tribe has to approve your attorney. So I reached out to the tribal court and I got a list of all of their approved attorneys and I started calling them. Found one that answered. She was very empathic and listened and helpful. She knew the people. Interestingly, this story didn't make it into the video, but Olin Beecher, who is the director of the Game and Fish, who was the one kind of orchestrating all of the trouble for me, he had personally baited her family dog off of her property just a few months before I called her, and shot it in the back of the head in the name of claiming that it was causing trouble with cattle because they do a lot of cattle ranching. But the baiting laws in Arizona it's like if there's a bear killing your cattle, you can then create an attractant that lures it in and kill it as a nuisance bear. But he was doing that based on someone's pet, off of the reservation, not on the reservation. So I found out that she actually has a little bit of a personal history with him. He's an officer with the Fish and Game? He's the director of the Fish and Game.
Okay, gotcha. Wow, okay. So the fish stinks from the head. Okay, right.
Yeah. But if you and I were neighbors and your dog came over and, was causing trouble on my property, how much trouble would your dog have to cause before I would nonchalantly shoot your dog in the back of the head? Is the question. And Frank, that's like just if we were neighbors, but like from a position of authority to set up a trap to attract someone's family dog, I don't know. This guy is a piece of work, is what I'll say. But kind of going back to just the whole court case, he refused to negotiate in any way. We hey, can we pay half based on this and this? Like, my argument was the airport wasn't closed because one of the charges was that you flew into an airport that was closed, or you flew into an area of the reservation that was posted as closed. And as such, you now owe us $1,400. And my argument was if you are posting an airport as closed, it has to be posted as closed.
With the FAA, with
the FAA. It has to be posted as closed from the sky, is my, a pilot has to know that it's closed when they're flying to the airport, rather than maybe saying there's a no trespassing sign at the gate.
Was there a no trespassing sign at the gate?
There was no trespassing.
Okay. There was no closed at the gate.
There was no closed at the gate. There was no gate at the gate. There was no X on the runway. There was no NOTAM. There was no anything. It was an open airport, a private airport, but an open airport. And I was like, this just you have no argument here. You can argue trespassing. You can argue I entered an area without a special use permit. You cannot possibly argue posted as closed. Show me the posting. And he was like, I don't care what you say.
Ipse dixit.
It's a conversation. We're not going to accept anything except the full fines. kind of going back though, because I remembered my train of thought. I hired that attorney on Monday. She went to work and visited the head of natural resources and visited the tribal office. And she went through, I called Officer Woods. I retraced back, reaching to the people that I'd spoken with, and started doing all my documentation. And at the end of Monday, I actually got a call from, his name is Officer Powsey. He's the one that seized the plane and cited me. And he said, hey, because we were expecting our director, Olin Beecher, to show back up today and help us sort this out, but he hasn't shown up to the office today. And because I spoke with the chair of the tribal council and she agreed, and because we don't actually have a way to move this plane, and because of this, like, gave me a list of 4 reasons, I can't remember all, we're going to let you come and pick up the plane. But we still want to see you in court. And I was like, I'm happy to show up to court. I would love to pick up my plane. I'm going to need this in writing before I bother to come back around the Grand Canyon and show up on your land. And so he says, let me work on that and I'll get back with you. So
were you concerned that they might like arrest you?
Yes. And I was just concerned about,
detain you?
One of the things he said when I went through the conversation initially when he was seizing the plane was, I have all this permission. I worked it out. Here's like what happened. And he said, you don't have it in writing, so it doesn't matter.
Oh, right. So when he's promising stuff, you better get it from writing from him.
When he's
makes sense.
Saying, you can come and get your airplane. You're good to go. My response was, I am not trying to be, but I'm going to need that in writing. I don't know if this is a family-friendly show, so I probably should have asked before
I completely.
But at the end of that conversation, he called me back 30 minutes later, this time with the chair of the tribal council. Her name was Sherry. On the line, she agreed he would pick me up at the airport, a different airport, because I had a buddy who also has a 210. He was going to fly me in. So they picked me up at 5:30 a.m. the next morning. I had a letter from Sherry with her signature on it saying I could come and get the airplane and that they were releasing it back to me. And I was, and then thank you, I appreciate it, went through that. And her sign off on the call was, we will see you in court. Not like, have a good day. We will see you in court, which was interesting.
Right.
And this ends up being the same lady that, spoiler alert, said we should have kept the plane. If you saw the videos. But showed up 5:30 a.m. These 2 officers that seized the plane picked me up at the airport, drove me to the airplane. Very amicable, lots of questions about airplanes. Very excited to actually have me there and show them the plane and stuff. Very
the same 2 guys that were the big problem back on Sunday.
Yes, 2 days before.
Wow.
And ultimately, they were acting under the direct instruction of Olin Beecher.
Okay.
The one that decided what citations. He's the one that dictated. They had zero power to negotiate.
Okay.
He had tied their hands.
They were just being loyal servants. Gotcha.
Following orders.
Yep.
Yeah. And
soldiers. I meant loyal soldiers, not servants.
Yeah. But these guys dropped me off. I met my attorney there. We got the letter from them. And I got my plane back with you've got to show back up to court.
What was that pre-flight like?
Really very, very thorough. It took a while. I'm like, guys, I know you guys want to watch me take off, but it's going to take a minute.
Right.
And I certainly followed short field technique on that takeoff.
And did you see any, did you look for any, those trucks were parked so close. Did you look for any, did they hit it?
They didn't.
Okay, good.
These guys they were careful, and they were thorough. Like, speaking with them, they were apologetically, they were like, hey, we went through all your logbooks. Like, they went through not all the logbooks. They went through all of the paperwork, everything that I had in the plane. They had a photo of every item in the plane.
Okay.
So they thoroughly inspected everything in there. But they're like, we have an inventory of everything. We have evidence stickers on the side of the plane that sealed off once they were done, which, by the way, won't come off. For the love of, if anyone has any tricks, let me know. I don't know how to get evidence.
I don't know. Maybe you leave it. It's a definitely a badge of honor at this point. Maybe
it's a conversation starter.
Yeah.
At your FBOs. But they were like, no, we promised. We were very careful. Like, they had questions of like, how do you steer this thing and stuff like that. Like they were very curious, which was, endearing and honestly, I didn't have a negative interaction on that pickup. These guys were very respectful, very friendly, very helpful. And I think at least one of these guys was actually really instrumental in helping me get the plane back. Like, he wasn't in the background trying to keep the plane. He was in the background trying to get me permission to get the plane back. And it was lucky that Olin Beecher didn't show up to work for whatever reason on that Monday when it was suddenly a problem. They seized the plane. And he just didn't show up to work that day. It was really nice to not have him fighting to keep the plane.
So why, with this private airstrip in the middle of nowhere, why was it such a big deal to the Fish and Game department that this plane just cannot exist here at this? I mean, why the rush? Why to get it off? We got to get it moved. I mean, were they expecting, a big party there? I mean, it doesn't make sense to me, the sense of urgency that they had to get you moved.
I don't know. They didn't give any good reason for it. They searched my plane really thoroughly for any indication that I was on their land poaching. So they were looking for camouflage, optics, hunting, anything hunting related. And I hunt and I fish, but I had nothing related in my aircraft. So they had no indication that I was actually there doing what they are actually designated to.
Okay. All right. That's their purview. Okay.
Yeah. And there was a whole argument of what, how is this within your purview anyways? And they didn't, it was ultimately they said that area is hunting, that is cattle, it is wildlife, and it is, I mean, it's an isolated little area, but it's a fenced off airport.
Right.
Or strip. So I don't know how they really made the claim that was their jurisdiction, and they gave absolutely no logical reason why they were escalating it the way that they were. I assumed, initially it was a sense of, oh, there's somebody landing here. They're showing disrespect. They didn't get permission. They're just like treating us.
Disrespect, which they have a chip on the shoulder. They might have a chip on the shoulder about that, which you talked about earlier. So that makes sense.
And I could understand that, but I had attempted to get permission, and I was given permission from, after calling the right people, they told me I needed to talk to this person, and like I followed their.
Right.
And these aren't like published procedures.
No.
It's, here's the airport manager, call this number, and go through that. So, yeah, ultimately, I think it came down to some internal political infighting between Olin Beecher and
the police department.
I think they have some conflict between the two of them that I'm just not.
You got caught in the middle of that. Okay.
Yes.
That makes sense. Okay, so you're able to get your plane away, and that felt good, I imagine, once the wheels left the pavement.
Yes. Freedom for sure. It's like, and my attorney videoed it. I don't know that I've ever taken off in less runway.
It is a great short field takeoff.
Let's get this thing off of the ground. Really nice to get home with that. But what they told me was, and I'm learning that this wasn't probably completely true, but there might be some truth to it. If I didn't show up to court, if I didn't go through the process, they would escalate the case to a federal case.
Right.
The FBI would get involved, and then the FBI would have grounds to seize the plane again because they released it on whatever terms. Because they don't have any authority once you're off of their
What was the okay? So I guess they could make a complaint to the federal government, but I think that maybe there's less political infighting among the Fed. Well, that's a stupid statement in this day and age. I guess. Okay, so let's get it taken care of. I see it. All right.
And I'm I'm not overly confrontational. My goal was to resolve the problem, so I wasn't trying to avoid going to court and it.
Right.
But ultimately, what I learned through, well, I don't know, those 2 videos, I have almost 10,000 comments now
Right.
on the 2 videos. I'm pretty sure quite a few of those people have some experience here if you read some of those stories, but ultimately, I think that the FBI only gets involved if it's criminal, and these weren't criminal charges. So it's likely that was a bluff to just try and make sure I came back.
Yeah, okay. But that's fine. You're going to be a person of integrity. You said you'd come back, you'll come back.
That was my goal.
Yeah.
So
it doesn't matter if the threat was real or not. It just doesn't matter.
It didn't, to me. And I knew that I knew some of this, but all of like my agreement to come back, all of that happened by Monday after Sunday. Like, you're talking a very short window before I got there, and I agreed to pay the fines. I agreed to come back, so that's what I was going to do. But I waited till my court date. I showed up to court.
But hang on though, before we get and tell people the spoiler alert of what happened. You showed up, but you didn't have your attorney that was blessed by the court, the tribe. You had to lose your attorney.
That's the second court date.
Oh, there was a first court date.
First court date.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Nope.
All right. So tell us the first one.
We understand that we're going to trial for this thing. But we show up. The judge takes our pleading of not guilty and then says, we're filing for a pro tem judge. I'm recusing myself.
Okay. So it was just a quick hearing, the charges and then the recusal. Okay.
And we were like, hey, is there, like, we were hoping to solve this today. Can we try and, like, settle this? And so the judge gave us, like, 45 minutes in the jury room with the with the director of the Game and Fish and his officers and me and my attorney. And we went back and forth, explained the whole thing, and got get bent. We're not settling this. We'll see you in court.
Oh, wow. Okay.
From them. And so to me, that was where.
Okay, so you got your attorney and you got that guy, and that guy allegedly baited your attorney's family pet and shot it in the back of the head. So those are the two parties that are trying, or at least she's trying to settle. He's not having any. Okay, gotcha. Just to keep the context in place. Okay.
I'll say allegedly as well.
Yeah. Right.
But yes, and so we're in there, and I was hoping, like, hey, maybe there was some miscommunication. Maybe he didn't know that I'd gotten permission in this way and then permission in this way, or maybe this or the other. No miscommunication. We are not settling.
Okay.
We will not accept anything short of you paying all the fines today. And at that point, I could have paid the $2,400 and settled it that day and pled guilty. But I don't know. The guy was being a bully.
Right.
I didn't want to.
Okay. Fair enough.
I'd already agreed upon a pay package with my attorney that included all the way through. And so it wasn't going to cost me any more except another trip to their tribe. And so I kept running with it.
Okay.
I probably should have just settled.
No, I don't. Well, no, we won't get into spoiler alert there for what happened to DM, but go ahead. Continue.
Well, so then we get to 30 days more for a trial before our next trial date. This day is actually, like, that's going to happen. I subpoena Officer Woods. I subpoena Scott Crozier. And those are my two
witnesses
that I need. They subpoenaed two officers besides Officer Woods, and they subpoenaed the chief of police. They subpoenaed Scott Crozier as well. And so we have and then obviously the two officers that were there for this citation. So we have our list of people that are supposed to show up, arrive to court, and not a single officer from the Wallify Police Department bothers to show up. Oh, wait, sorry. I'm skipping let's go back to your story.
Let's go back. So you had the two lines are drawn, but then didn't they, like, add charges or change charges?
They didn't change charges against me. They charged my attorney.
Okay.
is what they did. So go back to, they'll only allow you to use an attorney that is an approved attorney
Of the tribe.
the game and with the tribe. I chose an approved attorney who's also a member of the tribe because that was the person that answered my phone after being
right.
a bunch of times. I took the first attorney that would
Say yes.
yes, they will help me. And I'm very happy with my attorney, so don't get me wrong there. We went through 2 weeks before the second trial. They filed a charge, and they sent me the letter, and I don't have it here, but it said, we're filing to dismiss Patricia for representing William in this case because she's violated the ethics of being an attorney within the tribal system.
But no specifics.
Very cut and dry, specific to me, to my case, and her not being able to represent me. So she had a hearing before that case. She showed up, and the judge dismissed the charges. They have no charges against. They dismissed the attempt to dismiss her as my attorney.
They dismissed the dismissal.
Yes. They'd never filed any kind of legal charges against her. They had no evidence of any wrongdoing. They didn't have anything. So 2 days before my trial, they refiled. This time it wasn't the game and fish only. They got the tribe's attorneys involved as well. So the tribe's attorneys then filed a general dismissal of her as an attorney or as able to represent as an attorney in the tribe. And then they got the police department to file charges of lying to the police.
Of you lying to the police.
Her lying to the police.
Oh, her lying to the police. Okay.
She's a tribal attorney. She is consistently representing people against the tribe. She had one of her clients visiting her home office, and they were reviewing evidence tapes of what had happened but interestingly enough, some police brutality. So it was a pretty brutal thing that they were reviewing on the tapes. And the man got upset and was not calming down. And so she was feeling unsafe. And so she called the police to ask them to come and help escort him off the property. He never had any action or didn't do anything violent, but it was a tense, uncomfortable situation.
Right.
And she's working out of her home office. And this is just a single lady. And so she's like, I never said I was going to file charges against him. I asked the police to come and help me in getting this guy off my property. And they did. And then 60 days later, once it became expedient for them to have something to complain about her for, they filed charges against her. And then the court, prior to her hearing, suspended her from being able to practice as an attorney.
2 days before.
2 days before
Your hearing.
trial.
Yeah.
And again, call me a conspiracy theorist, but their first charges really specifically said they were removing her from representing me. That was try number one. Try number two that they did a better job at just removed her in general. But it doesn't mean that try number two was to remove her in general. It was still just to remove her from representing me, is my view. It's a targeted attack to make sure I don't have an attorney in court the next day. Which I don't know, I think is a pretty dirty.
Oh, yeah.
So
Allegedly. Yeah.
yeah, allegedly dirty trick. I don't know. Alleged trick that's pretty dirty. But they, Patricia had another friend who was, she works with the Bureau of Indian Affairs. She's not a member of the tribe, but she's very educated in the law code that I was being charged under. And called her. She agreed to show up. I did a phone conversation with her for an hour or so the night before. Showed up early the day of my court. We went through everything. We got all the paperwork together. She filed my motions for dismissal, and she was very educated on the law, but she actually didn't know any of the courtroom procedures. And so it was kind of I don't know. I was real sick of dealing with this, and I did not want to drag it out another month or two before a third trial date because of this, because I could have filed for an extension. But we showed up with my second attorney, surprised them that day because they expected me to show up without representation. And our first thing was just a motion for dismissal because really for grounds. When you charge someone and they already had permission from a person who's authorized to give permission, the charges seem a little bit dubious. But they were actually supposed to, in their law code, they're supposed to give me a court date sooner than 10 days or sooner from the charge date. And they didn't. They marked, it was 23 days, I think. They're supposed to let me bond out. If I'm willing to pay the fines, they're supposed to release the assets immediately. And they're supposed to have a mechanism where I can go with them and pay those fines and sort it out right then and there. And they refused to do that as well. But ultimately, we're all sitting in court and kind of going, I skipped forward to this earlier, none of the officers from the tribal police who would have been on my side as having dealt with this and solved it and resolved it in their law enforcement department with the vice chair, they didn't show up. And I really don't know why. I don't know if that's these two departments infighting, or I don't know if it's them just, because they were key witnesses for my side.
Right.
So I'm a little lost as to why they weren't there. But Scott Crozier did show up. And in the courts, like during this time, there was an election in this tribe. He was no longer the vice chair as of like the week before.
Okay.
He wasn't reelected. He was just there as the former vice chair. And then the chair, Sherry, the "we'll see you in court" Sherry, was there, and she had 2 more days left before she was no longer the chair of the tribal council. So there was a big shift of political power happening in the background here that I'm sure played into some of this mess. But we filed our motion for dismissal. The judge actually showed up an hour late, and he was on a Zoom call. Like
he was on a laptop, Irk.
They brought him in on. They're like, "All rise for the honorable judge," and then they bring in a laptop with the judge on a Zoom call. Laugh it up. So, yeah, when you're in the seat, trying not to laugh because of and
wow.
I was really grateful for an outside judge. So these are funny jokes, but I was very grateful.
Yeah, because it's outside all the political infighting. So now we can have a voice of reason.
Yes, and he was a very no nonsense, straightforward guy. So first things first, hey, I've got a motion for dismissal. What's your response? Or have you had a chance to review it? And he asked this to the game and fish officer. And the game and fish officer is there without attorney representation or any help from tribal attorneys. He's there alone.
Is it the head of the? Oh, so it's just one of his guys, one of the 2 guys that were there that day. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just one of the 2. He didn't even have like
his buddy. Yeah. Okay.
Everyone else is in the witness stand. So this guy's response was, "I haven't had a chance to review it," and the judge is like, "Okay, how much time do you need?" And so he gives him a few minutes, and the guy just like frantically is like looking at the papers, but I don't think he even was bothering reading it.
Well, he's not an attorney.
And he's way in over his head as far as this is likely one of his first times going through this, is my guess. I'm speculating, but based on seeing. So the judge says, "You've had a chance to review. Now what is your response?" So he pulls out the charges and he starts reading, "On this and this date, we found the airplane here." And the judge like waits almost a minute and stops him. He's like, "I know what the charges are. I've previously reviewed them. What is your response to the dismissal?" And he's like, "I don't have one." And so the judge is like, "Okay." So and the dismissal is like, "Hey, you didn't follow your code laws here. You didn't follow your code laws here." And he got permission here. And the vice chair or the chair actually let him get the plane back here because of these things. So like you've got to have a response to these. And he didn't. So the judge is like, "All right, I'm going to consider this, but I'm just going to can we call one witness and start hearing some witness testimony while I keep this under consideration?" And he agrees. So we call Scott Crozier to the stand. And Scott is a really like just easygoing guy. He gets up, they swear him in, they dismiss everyone else from the courtroom because this is just a one-room courtroom where all the witnesses are sitting in the back, which was really helpful because then Scott doesn't have any of the other, I would say, what could be political influence or
infighting, yeah,
there to create pressure. And then you don't have any chance of one witness hearing one witness testimony and having it affect it. So he testifies. Yeah, William called me on this date. He explained this situation. I agreed to let him pick up the plane for this fee. This is what happened. I told the Game and Fish at this day on this time. I don't know why they escalated the way that they did. Yes, I'm the vice chair and I'm authorized to give that permission. And so afterwards, the judge is like, I don't see why we can charge you for entering an area requiring a special use permit when you got permission. He's like, that's as good as...
Let me interrupt. Did during the testimony of Scott, did the Game and Fish officer say anything? Did he question Scott?
No. I think he may have asked one clarifying question, but he didn't have any sort of cross-examination, any sort of defense whatsoever.
Okay.
Yeah, he sat there and just let Scott testify and had nothing to refute it at all, like zero. So Scott went ahead and after he was done testifying and after we had our questions to him and he had no questions from the other side, he's like, can I be dismissed? I've got a welding class I'm trying to to teach. And we're like, we would kind of like him in case we need more questions, but he's like, you can call me and I'll come back. So they dismissed him and let him go. But the judge was like, okay, like...
Let's go back to that dismissal now with the evidence I've just heard. Yeah.
He's like, yeah, we're dismissing this. We're dismissing this with prejudice. He had permission. You can't say he didn't have permission. He's authorized to give permission. The rules actually, like, the chair and the vice chair are allowed to give people permission. If you, it's funny because the judge asked the officer questions more than the officer asked Scott questions.
Right.
But like, okay, how would one get permission to land at this airport? And initially he was like, this airport is closed, nobody uses it. And then later in the back and forth, he's like, well, no, but the tourism guys use it for some of the rafting trips. And the judge is like, okay, so I thought it was a closed airport. And he's like, no, they use it. He's like, so how did they get permission? He's like, well, they would talk to the Grand Canyon Resort Corporation.
The people you first called, right?
He described exactly the permission I went through.
Right.
And so the judge is like, all right, we're dismissing this. And then he made the comment about, for trespassing, you have to have moral guilt. You can't trespass in ignorance. And it's interesting because everyone's like, ignorance is not a defense.
Right.
Ignorance is not a legal defense. With trespassing, it is.
Oh, interesting.
Trespassing has to be posted. People have to know that they're trespassing in order for it to be trespassing. And
is that a tribe thing, principle, or is it like a United States legal principle?
United States legal principle.
Okay, interesting. I did not know that.
I thought it was very intriguing. He was like, legally it requires moral guilt. Because it's your responsibility as the property owner to have signs posted. It's not everyone else's responsibility. So those two charges were dismissed, and he's like, I don't know on an area posted as closed. He's like, this is the area that I'm a little bit fuzzy on. So he asked the officer if it was on a private road or a public road, and it is like, you've got the driveway and it's right off of a public road. And so my claim was, this is a public road. Here's a photo with no gate. Here's a photo with no trespassing sign. Here's a photo from the sky with no X's on the runway. We're pretty open here.
Right.
And the officer was like, nope, it's on a private road. It's posted as closed.
But he had no proof of that.
Zero.
Yeah.
Nothing. And so I raised my hand. I'm like, Judge, can I just talk for a second? Because I'm sitting here patiently letting my attorney kind of communicate and try and follow protocol. And I'm like, for an airport to be posted as closed, there has to be a notice to airmen 30 days prior. They have to, I think it's like a Form 8170 if you're permanently closing. Here's the requirements. X's have to be painted on the runways. You've got a list of things that have to go into place for an airport to be closed, because a pilot calls, and I've got my flight brief on ForeFlight before I did this. Like, a pilot goes through and, like, if there is a runway light out at the end of the runway, I'm going to know about it when I get these briefs. Like, that's the kind of things that pilots are getting notified of, like that kind of detail. And he's like, how long have you been a pilot? I was like, almost 10 years. He's like, well, they're actually building a airstrip near my house. And he's like, at the end of that airstrip, while it's under construction, are these giant X's that are lit from the road and from the sky. You can see it. He's like, so were there any X's on the runway now? I said, no. Was there any of this? He's like, okay, so I'm going to go ahead and dismiss this one as well. But then he turns to me, he's like, what are you hoping to get here? I'm like, and I told him, and my attorney sitting in the back room was mad. But I was like,
right, because you go, I want my expenses for coming back here. I want my,
That was in my motion for dismissal. I had a motion included in my motion to be paid for my expenses, but I didn't think it was even possible. I put that there as a
wish list,
counterbalancing threat.
Oh, okay.
To try and get them to be less likely to keep being aggressive. It gives me some room for negotiation, right? But I told him I was hoping to pay the fees that I agreed to pay. I told Scott Crozier I would pay those fees. I'm happy to pay those fees. That's my objective for today. And so he's like, how much was it? I'm like, $16.27 per person per day. But I don't know how you count it, how many days I was there versus my wife was there or what. He's like, does $75 sound fair? And I said, yes. And so he dismissed all charges, cited me $75. And then it was, they were allowed 30 days to refile. That date is passed now, but I don't know how long it takes for stuff to come in the mail. So it's still possible I'll get that notification if they refile 2 of the charges. One of the charges they can't refile
because of prejudice, yeah. Well, I think they'd be really stupid to refile, and if they did, I certainly hope you'd go after attorney fees and all that.
Yeah, I certainly would push at that point. And at this point, it's like, I don't think they would. I think it was a thorough enough.
It was fighting in the family, and you got caught in the middle.
Yeah, and the people that were half of that infighting group is now no longer in power.
Yeah. Okay. Well, unfortunately, it sounds like the good guys are not. Well, but you said the chairman was she in that last court date? Was she there? I'll see you in court.
She was not subpoenaed. She was not on the witness list. She showed up to court.
So she sat there in the back and watched it all
until they called witnesses, and then she was dismissed into the.
Oh, but she wasn't a witness.
She wasn't a witness. She just kind of got up with the crowd.
Oh, that's weird. Okay.
And then my dad was there. Also, we had him on our witness list just as another pilot.
So he had to walk away. Yeah.
Voice. So he had to walk away, but he was in the room. And that's when she actually said her thing in front of him. And I don't think she knew he was my dad or didn't. But she was upset with how the case went. And she said, that's what we get for being nice. We should have just kept the plane.
Wow. Okay. So that's not alleged then. Okay.
No, that was firsthand. Like,
yeah.
My dad came out of there like, wow, that opened my eyes to the anger here.
And why did she feel slighted? That's what we get for being nice? Wow. Okay. That's just really, yeah. All right. She's no longer the chair of the tribe, but unfortunately neither is Scott. Okay.
Yeah.
And you walked with integrity through the whole thing. And I think it was an integrity moment for you when the judge asked. So I know your attorney probably shaking her head, but I think you did the right thing.
I like to believe so, because I am not, I don't know, it's important to me. It sounds silly to some people, and I had a lot of people like, oh, you shouldn't have paid, whatever. And it's like, no, I said I would, and that's, so even in my motion, I made them write it into the motion.
That you would pay that. Yeah.
It's like, I'm not trying to get out of here and come in here and say, I'm not responsible for anything. In all of it, it was like, no, I'm responsible for this, and that's what I'm fighting for. So through the whole thing, that was my push.
Okay. Let's wrap this up. Any kind of last follow-ups to what's happened, especially since you posted your last video?
I don't know. The biggest thing to me is just you have to treat it like it's a different country. I mean, if you have an emergency landing on tribal lands, and that's where going through some of the comments were interesting. People having emergency landings on tribal lands or those kinds of situations where you have to act like that's a different country. And if you have to choose, I would do my best to choose not to put my aircraft into that situation again, with or without written permission is frankly how I feel about it. I would drive to and I would visit a tribe otherwise, but just the nature of them not understanding FAA rules, them not understanding aviation, and their willingness to, I don't know, to load your airplane up on a trailer.
Yeah. Or hire or try to find a pilot to fly somebody's plane. Yeah, I mean, that crosses a big line. And I think that what I would say is, I've gotten to know a lot of people in the FAA. And there are some really, really good people. Actually, most of the people I've met in the FAA are good people. I've gotten to know some really higher ups and have gone to lunch with them. But then you'll find that one, FSDO manager who is treating it like a fiefdom. You find these people that live by, ipse dixit, and, for whatever reason, there's a few out there, probably in everything. So I would say what I take away from your story is that, yes, there's ludicrous or crazy or even maliciousness in that tribe, but there's also the Scott Croziers and there's the Officer Woods, the people that were walking by integrity as well. So I think I don't want to just say, oh, the tribe is horrible. It wasn't the tribe. It was just one person over a department, and one other, so it was not even the majority at that point. It's just those people were, yeah. So
the officers that seized the plane.
Yeah.
Like, I had some really positive interactions with a lot of people there. And so I completely agree with what you're saying.
Yeah. So it's just, bad apple ruins the bunch. So, all right. Well, William, I really appreciate you coming on. And you guys, you should go look at his YouTube channel. It's called Should We Go Outside? And I guess you created that. Why did you create the YouTube channel? And talk about the channel for a minute.
Yeah, my son, I don't know, my kids watch YouTube more than they watch anything else.
Right.
So my son has been wanting to make a YouTube channel since he was probably 4 years old.
Oh, wow.
And so he's asked, and we've set stuff up, and then he shut down on camera. So finally he was like, hey, can we do this? And I was like, yeah, if it's stuff that we both want to do, let's do it. So we kind of created an outdoor YouTube channel earlier this year, January, and started putting some videos together, and it's done pretty well. Doing a lot better now with these two videos.
Right. That tends to happen. Well, I noticed in one thing, if there was something with your son that if you reached 1,000 subscribers, what was that?
Yeah, we were gonna start selling some merch, but we're also gonna try and start building a little cabin. We bought some products.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Have you started the cabin? Because you're over 4,000 now.
We're over 4,000 now, but that's happened really quickly. We haven't started the cabin yet. We're going to have to start that in our winter project in our shop as we start putting plans together. It happened a little faster than we anticipated. I didn't think we would be hitting 1,000 subscribers as quickly as we did.
Well, I encourage you to keep making videos, and I encourage the people listening to go and check out his YouTube channel. And I wish you all the best with that.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate it.
Okay, and you guys, thank you, and I like to thank our sponsors who make this possible. Colton Mortgage, Colton Taking Off, 67 Designs. They're the best mounts for cameras in your tablets in the plane or even in your car. Also, Marshall Protective Services, mpsprotects.com, Z-Vision, the brightest landing and taxi lights out there, xevision.com, and Clemens Insurance, clemensinsurance.net, and as always, Flying Eyes, They're the best glasses you can have under headsets because they're so thin. And you can get those at flyingeyesoptics.com. Use our discount code Taking Off, all caps, one word, for 10% off. Thank you guys for listening. We'll see you next time on the Taking Off podcast.